I think civil society is critical in the driving the agenda of the future of Europe, if you like, because I suppose all social change and all policy change is driven by what public opinion is, or what is the right direction driven by public opinion. I think there's a number of key areas where this is important. If you take, for instance, the environment, there's no doubt that public opinion has to drive the need for change in that. Okay, on one side, you can have industry in that will, if you like, make changes in terms of on the commercial side of it. But the public, in terms of housing, in terms of transport, in terms of so many areas, it's critical what part it has to play in, let's say, in changing mindsets, in getting actively involved, like the likes of better energy communities and things like that, where people can actually play a meaningful role in activating change rather than just advocating for change. And then I think on the like of social issues, I think people's opinion and voice has been so important in let's say issues like the rule of law and the recognizing people's basic civil rights. Equally in areas such as like with COVID, with the health crisis, we've seen where, like, if you like, Europe can act to address health issues very much in the preventative medicine space. And I think it worked very well in the COVID situation. And I think there's the possibility that, let's say, preventative medicine at a European level is something that maybe people should look for in terms of Europe getting involved on the if you like, the health stage. And equally in issues like housing is a massive issue here in Ireland, but it's a big issue across Europe, across the world. And a collective response, not just a national response in relation to issues like that, but probably the biggest one of all, I think, for people to engage with, is the whole nature of, if you like, the nature of discourse that we have at this stage in society. Like in the digital era, it's become very much an era of a monologue where people just put their idea out. Gone are the days when you have a debate or where two people spark off each other to find the better position. And I think there's a lack of engagement with other people's point of view. And that leads to the polarization that we have in society. And it leads to, if you like, a lack of respect of other people's perspective. And I think it's very much led to if you like, a fundamentalism or extremism, where people haven't, if you like, haven't had that level of engagement with each other. So I think one thing we need to do at European level is look at how discourse and debate is conducted, because in an era where people are creating their own reality, and if you like, only listening to a kind of confirmatory bias of their own opinion, we need to challenge that, and everybody needs to challenge that and needs to respect other people's perspective and point of view. And I think society has a big part to play in changing the way we conduct that discourse, that it's about engaging with other people's point of view rather than always just putting your own point of view forward. And I think that would be very important. I think the challenges that it faces is, for one, the environment is a massive challenge. And I think certainly Europe is doing a lot in that space in terms of looking at anything from transport to agriculture to the aviation sector, in terms of energy, the idea of retrofitting homes and all that. There's a lot of work being done at European level in relation to the environment. And I think alongside that also is the whole basic civil rights area, where the online abuse, the threats of physical violence, even state-sponsored aggression, if you like, are things that are real challenges we have going forward. And I think certainly at European level, perhaps Europe has taken this more seriously than it did in previous times. I think certainly in the last 6 or 12 months, when you see this situation with the like of Hungary or Poland and that, where Europe has taken an active role and where they've brought the rule of law into play in terms of addressing some of these issues. I think that's Europe playing a very strong part in what is a very serious issue. The other area, I suppose, that probably is very important is the role of organisations and and how they're supported at European level. And I think certainly in civic society, voluntary and community organisations are a key part of that. And I think Europe has identified that. And like at a time post COVID, when they're challenged from funding wise, like it's obvious that voluntary organisations have struggled in terms of raising their own funds. Like at national and European level, a certain amount of funding has been brought forward. I think that's very positive. But also, I think that will have to continue into the future. Also, there's probably a regulatory burden put on these organisations in terms of compliance. That is something we really need to look at as well at European level. And I think that's something that certainly needs more work in terms of community and voluntary sector play a massive part, and we don't do enough to support them in terms of making the job easier on one side. And post-COVID, the lack of funding that there's fundings, these organisations have been starved from funding, and there's a need to support them financially as well. And I think Europe recognises that, and there are a lot of funding opportunities out there that organisations need to look at. I think one thing is very important is to be in a position to access this funding going forward, to have the if you like, the feasibility work done and the support put in place to be able to access this funding going forward. Well, I think certainly why should they is a very important question, because I think there's always a challenge to make sure that the voice is properly heard at European level. And I suppose at the minute, there are a number of ways in which that's been done. The Conference on the Future of Europe is currently underway. It's just beginning. And it's a look at where the future of Europe is going. And I suppose there's a couple of things about this. This could become all about corporation tax and a European army, or it could become about putting the citizen first. And I think it's very important that people engage with the real issues that matter to people in terms of their own day-to-day lives. And this doesn't become about a kind of a corporate Europe. And so ordinary people engaging with the Conference on the Future of Europe is vital. Alongside the Conference on the Future of Europe, there's also a long-term vision for rural areas that is currently being discussed. And I think it's very important that in terms of a vision for where rural Europe is going, that people should engage with that as well. And then I suppose alongside that, the green and digital transition is something that has so many facets to it and so many parts that the public can play a part in, whether it's retrofitting houses, whether it's a better transport solutions, whether it's redeveloping the hearts of our rural communities, whether it's the idea of remote working and the possibilities it provides. There's so much there that the public need to engage, that this is framed in a way that's practical and works for the ordinary people. So I think it's vital that people do engage at this point, because there's post-COVID, as I feel like there's a chance to build back better, and we can only build back better with people's involvement. And so with the Conference of the Future of Europe, the long-term vision for rural areas are ways in which people really should engage. But even at a more simple level with your MEPs, the like of myself or the other MEPs that are out there, to an ongoing dialogue there in terms of like always interested in setting up focus groups around particular issues and hearing what the opinions of people are on a specific issue. Can contact the like of me anytime on my email address, which is colm.markey@europarl.europa.eu. It's a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully we can put it up on the screen there, or even through any of the social media channels. But certainly, I think it's vital that people do the basics as well. Like the idea of voting at European level is so important, because if you don't vote, you're not really exercising your mandate. If you don't do that, then your voice is not perhaps respected, because people, well, if they're not going to vote, we won't engage. So it's vital that people vote. I think it's vital that particularly the younger generation vote, because I often find that the older generation get caught up in party politics, but the younger generation are more in tune with the issues than anybody. But vote on the issues and vote on the candidates that represent the issues that matter to you. And I think engaging with Europe at that level, engaging with the policy changes you want to see happen, that matter to you rather than matter to corporate Europe, if you like, is very important. So personally, and I think it's the case of most MEPs, engaging with civil society is vital, key role to play in terms of keeping Europe focused on what the priorities are for the ordinary person. And by getting involved, be it through political organisations, be it through the like of focus group discussions, or in getting involved in the likes of the Conference on the Future of Europe and the long-term vision for rural areas, and indeed the green and digital transformation. Through these things, you can have a greater part to play in shaping our future. Because let's face it, whether it's the civil issues, whether it's the environment, or whether it's, let's say, the means how we're going to work in the future, these are all issues that are going to be central to our lives. And the actions that we take as individuals and the policy platform that we develop on the basis of what public opinion is vital to all our futures. And on that basis, I think it's so important that people engage with these issues.